Aniket and I fully hope that we are able to do justice for the time that you are taking out to join this webinar today. First of all, the intent of this webinar is definitely we have like only an hour, so we will not be go into a lot of depth, but we have tried to maintain that we don't remain very superfluous, and I and Aniket will try to get into the details as much as possible. While we would like to keep most of the questions towards the end, but at the same time, if there are questions which you would like to ask us while in the context of a slide or a information that we are sharing, I would be definitely more than happy to pick up those questions, and Aniket and I can answer that. Coming to the flow of the conversation, we have kind of divided this into broadly categories based on the questions that we had seen from all of you in terms of what are your expectations from this particular session. And we have tried to organize all the information around that. So hopefully, most of the questions, expectations that you had put in as part of the form, we should be able to address, right? So as you see, this is broadly the outline where we kind of want to kind of touch upon what is AI, the different, in the while AI in concept has been there for many years, but as a technology, I think it has come to the mainstream only in the last few years, and especially I think with the whole generative AI thing, with the whole large language model, it is kind of coming more into mainstream only in the last couple of years. So, what are these different layers? We'll talk about that. We will talk about what are the different AI stack, which because from tooling to infrastructure, it is there everywhere. So we will try to briefly touch upon those aspects. We will try to touch upon what is the difference between an AI product versus a traditional digital product. In the context of that, we will further also talk about some of the core skills, because this audience is a mix of people who come from product management background versus also people who come from data science backgrounds, right? So we have tried to keep it relevant for both type of audience. So we will be focusing on both of them. Apart from that, there is going to be we will deep dive into one of the use cases for AI product case study, and a little bit of the depth and the breadth of how does a day of a AI PM looks like. Those are some of the things that we will touch upon. So if you could go to the next slide, Aniket, a little introduction about me and Aniket. My name is Malti, and I'm a product leadership coach and trainer. After 21 years in the industry, after working through several services and product companies, I decided to hang my boots and go more my own whims of what I wanted to do. So today I am a fractional CPO at a growth stage startup called as Herky, formerly Jobs for Her. I'm a visiting faculty at few B schools. I am also founder of this is my latest passion of a podcast called as Level Up Broadcast. And apart from that, I also do a lot of product leadership coaching and boot camps. My co-speaker today, we go back to our time at PayPal. That's where we connected. So Aniket is a principal product manager, and he works with this company called as ASAP. And prior to that, he has worked with several MNCs. And Aniket himself has actually, made this transition where he comes with somebody who's a rich data science background, and he has moved into the AI product management role. And that's where we actually stumbled upon this idea of doing this webinar and garnering the interest, right? And he is going to be taking us through a lot of the items that we spoke about in the agenda today. So without any more further ado, I'll just ask Aniket to take it over the first section of the conversation today. Thank you, Aniket.
Thank you, Malti, and thank you everyone for taking out time on a weekday and for this webinar. So we'll start with the basic. I'll quickly jump into the content. So I believe most of us know that this is the most asked question on the internet or Chat GPT per se. Like, what is AI versus ML versus deep learning? So let's start from the basic. Why we are doing so is because actually covering the definition will help us to set the context for the coming slides, right? So let's start with what is AI. So AI is actually a system, a process, which using that we can automate certain tasks, otherwise which requires human effort and intelligence. So in a way, we are mimicking the human behavior and intelligence with a machine to save. The objective here is to save human productivity and apply it somewhere where more human judgment is required than a machine judgment, right? So you're replacing a human effort with a machine's effort. So anything that is any product like that categorized into that category is called artificial intelligence product, AI product. It can be rule based, it can be machine learning, deep learning based, right? So it's not necessarily that AI always have to be a machine learning model or deep learning model only. It can be a rule based model as well, rule based flow as well. For example, let's take an example of maybe an internet issue, right? So let's say I am facing today morning my internet issue. So that's the intent. So I what I do is I call the um, Airtel customer care, or maybe I go to the app of Airtel customer care, go to the help section, see the issue that are listed there. So most likely, I am not talking to a person as soon as I start the conversation. There is a bot who is facing me. Um, the bot has listed questions to me. I'll only have to either select those questions which I want to ask, or I'll have only the option of selecting yes and no. So, for example, I am facing an internet issue. That's an intent. So the most likely the suggested question will be, are you facing an internet issue? So either I'll select on the question or I'll say yes. Is your modem off? So I'll say no. And then is your do you want to raise a ticket or do you want to raise a complaint? So I'll say yes. So you can see that my answers are actually dictated by the questions that a bot is asking me, and I only have the choice to select those questions. This is called rule-based example. So here you can see there's no model running, no deep learning algorithm running, simply a flow of questions and answers, which are also pre-decided by the bot. So this is called deterministic flow or rule-based flow, where questions are set and answers are also set. So now if you think about it, earlier this task was done when the machines were not there, when the bot was not there, a human was doing it. So now you replace the human element with a machine there, right? So that's where we automated the whole stuff, and it becomes, overall as a product, if we see, it becomes an AI product. You can add other rules on top of it. The rules can be complex, can be deeper. That's a separate point, but actually fundamentally it is something like we can call this as a AI bot or chat bot, right? So that's the AI, artificial intelligence. Let's move on to machine learning. So machine learning, you can call this as a subset of AI. Machine learning is a set of algorithms that we apply on, let's say, historical data which we collected, and then make predictions out of that. The role of machine learning is a bundle of algorithms. Whatever problem you have, you're solving that problem using those algorithms. The best example here would be, let's say, recommendation engine, Amazon, Flipkart, Mintra, right, or Netflix, YouTube shorts that we watch. Mostly they are recommendation based. How they're recommendation based? They have a long history of me, let's say, browsing, the content over the products, over the website, or over the videos, whatever I have watched so far. They have logged that information with my user ID, my customer ID per se. And the idea is that the moment I comes every time to the website or to the app, they see that, okay, how historically I behaved, right? And there is a probability, there is a chance that I will behave in future similarly, right? So historical behavior will be repeated here. So that's the assumption. With a certain level of accuracy, something is recommended to me, right? So let's say if I like books, then most likely books will be recommended. If I like fiction books or fictional books, then most likely fictional books will be recommended me. This is called item to item mapping. So in ML algorithms, there are set of models that we run: supervised learning, unsupervised learning, collaborative filtering. These are kind of techniques which are used in recommendation example that I was talking about. So here, machine or the recommendation engine, or the machine learning algorithm recommending that, okay, if Aniket is here, he is most likely to choose this product, this book, this video, so and so forth. So that is a set of machine learning algorithms running in the backend. Moving further, the deep learning example. So deep learning is, you can say, a subset of machine learning and artificial intelligence, you can say. They are designed for specific tasks. So when I say specific tasks, these are more complex tasks. So for example, let's say I have to build an app which detects the face of human, right? Now face is actually an image, right? So image is a collection of pixels if we break that down. And the better the image is, or you want to build a better algorithm, you need to fine grain, you need to tune a lot of pixels. So a lot of information you have to process there. So their machine learning models have some limitation to process that much amount of data, so that you have to go one level deeper, right? So which is more complex task, more complex data patterns are solved with deep learning algorithms. So here in this face detection examples, we use models like computer vision, CNN, object detection, segmentation models in the backend, which actually give us the image classification or object identification, face detection, so on and so forth. Right? That was the So that's where the deep learning problems are solved for. In terms of ratios, mostly these days, so far before the launch of the famous Chat GPT, mostly problems in AI ML space were solved via ML. Now slowly, because you can see the models, the large model, the deep learning model that are available these days are democratized, right? It's hyper competitive market. Now there are more companies who are emerging, who are solving problems via apply artificial intelligence and then deep learning. We will talk more about these companies and the products in the coming slides. Yeah, I can move on to the next slide. So yeah, so let's understand the stack of AI, and it will be clear in a bit that why we are talking about the stack part, right? So I'll start from the bottom where we are talking about a hardware layer. So at the bottom there are companies, or there are systems, machines who are provided to us to solve or to build those models, right? For example, Nvidia, Intel, and AMDs. These are the companies who provide GPUs and CPU machines to run our models. If you're running a large model, we need a GPU. Hosting big models require big systems, big processing units. That is GPU only. So that is provided by these three companies mainly in the world. There are a lot of other companies who are the technology is growing, but primarily these companies are very famous. The second layer is the infrastructure and platform layer. So the left hand side is infrastructure layer, where mostly the cloud platform comes into picture, where provided by Google, Amazon, Microsoft, these cloud systems are there to store our databases. So again, because I'm talking about a large database, they have to be stored on a cloud to run those models smoothly. Then on the right hand side, we have developer tools. These are actually platforms, you can say. Now, a lot of companies have come up in this area. So not only these two companies, the slide might be a little old here, but you can see that Google, Amazon, Microsoft also have their AI platforms available, which are helping the users to just to upload their data, and they can configure whatever based on the problem statement that they have, configure the model and run the models. So in a way, you don't have to code if you're using a platform. So it's a no code kind of environment where you can just select the model from drop down and then just run it. Now it's up to users responsibility how he or she using the data post running the models, post running the results. Model can give you like you just have to upload the data, model can give you certain results, you use them. So that's the developer stack, developer tool comes into picture. The last layer or the top layer is the application layer. This is where the growing the software application, AI application part is growing post chat GPT era of 2022, right? And this is where the mostly the startups are solving problems using deep learning, machine learning, AI kind of. This area is actually also called MLAS, which is like machine learning as a software or AI as a software, where companies solving different problems, like companies are building chatbots, machine translation, language detection, audio to speech recognition. All these companies who are building these products fall in this area. And that is the area where most of the job opportunities in future will lie, like job opportunities for data scientists, machine learning engineers, and especially AI PMs, because this is the field that is going to grow, and it's actually daily basis that's growing. Yeah. So let's expand this the AI stack a bit further and see how on where the PMs, especially the AI PMs, fit into in this whole blocks of different technologies that we have. So the bottom layer is the tooling or the platform layer, which is actually the second layer of the last slide, just to link between the two slides. So ML platforms, as I mentioned, that companies like Azure or Amazon SageMaker, H2O, these are providing us platforms where user has to upload their data, select the required model. So they are not choosing their model. You have to, as a data scientist, you have to select the model. You should know that what problem I'm solving and what model I'm running. Select the model, run the model on the data, and use the results the way you want to. whatever your requirements are, right? So here you're just getting a platform so that you don't have to run a model. You don't need a, let's say, cloud machine or GPU to run a model. You're just using that server that is available to you. So that is the tooling part, that is a platform part. The next one is AI services. Now, AI services is another layer on top of tooling where companies like, as I mentioned, like IBM, Azure, Google, or Amazon, they are not only providing the platform, they're providing specific services. For example, IBM Watson has a chatbot. Now, you are, let's say, an airline industry. You don't want to develop, or you don't have the capacity to develop the chatbot in your own company. So you can actually outsource this work to, let's say, IBM Watson. So IBM now will deploy their technology, whatever inbuilt technology, on your systems, with the integration requirements and everything. And then the idea is that you will, every time whenever a conversation happens through the chatbot, it goes to IBM. IBM runs that. The chatbot gives the response. There'll be a front end on your website only. In the back end, IBM Watson chatbot will be running and giving the responses, and you use those responses. So there is a layer got created where IBM is providing you a software. So that is called AI services, in which you can directly use that. So here also, one level, or I would say the differentiation between the last two, the last layer and this layer, is that in the last layer you were using the results, you were selecting the model to run. In this layer, you don't have to do that. You just have a problem. You just give the problem to IBM, and they handle it with their own, and they improvise the model. They use the results, so on and so forth. So all the iterations are handled by them. The other examples are Amazon recognition. This is a recommendation engine that is available. So you take that service, deploy it on your website, and then it runs the way whatever the requirements are. Then we have the application layer, which is the area where mostly we use on day-to-day basis, like Google Maps, the chatbots. As example, I took on the telephone, like the Airtel example, face recognition. This is Samsung S24. So all these applications where companies are building it on their own platforms, or there are companies who are product-based companies, so who are building these products to other for other companies. So there can be a bit of overlap between the first and the second, but there is a level of differentiation. So because many companies do want to build their own AI/ML application on their platform, they don't want to outsource it. So those companies will actually fit in this criteria, the first one. So if my personal experience fall in this region mainly, in my previous company as well as the current company. So it's a product based company. We are developing products and sell it to the other companies, B2B. But for example, in this area, the idea is to build the AIML products in house. Then so the product consume the AIML model. So basically the requirement comes from the product side. The We build the AIML model, and then AML model gets deployed within the product, and then whatever the requirements are, the product satisfied. So here the in-house PMs of the company, the data scientists, machine learning engineers, all work together, and then build the product. So if you see the distribution now, especially the PM roles, so 70% of the roles fall in this particular area, this particular region. Next 20% is the AI services area, where mostly PMs who have experience in AI services side plus engineering side more, they go in this region. The bottom is mostly engineering. I should not say core engineering, mostly engineering, because platform knowledge is required here, like how the platform gets inbuilt, what are the integrations requirements of the platform, end-to-end testing, and other things like technical skills are required in this ML tooling and platform side of the house. So 10 to 15% of the PMs fall in this region. So that's how the roles are distributed. So mostly you will see roles, the companies, which is the first application layer I was talking about in the previous slide, is the first block here. Yeah. I hope, Malti, there's no questions. Otherwise, I can stop and we can take the questions if there's a
There is one question which is asking that how do I transition, which we are, I think,
quick.
going to be touching upon in
Yeah.
the upcoming slides.
Okay.
Yeah, there is one more question. Just give me a minute. How to get access to the deck? We will be sharing the deck
Okay.
as well
Yeah.
as the recording. So yeah.
Okay. So now let's understand a little bit more on the product side, and then we'll come to the skill side. So, so a lot of time these questions, come to us that what is the difference between these products, like when say Gen AI product versus a simple AI ML product or ML product, I would say, and then traditional software products. So there are people who are part of traditional software industry, which is like ongoing always. And then there are people who are in ML. There are people who are this new emerging, I would say, area called Gen AI. So where people want to move, right? So what is it? Let's understand the difference. There are, of course, there can be many more criteria. We have listed a couple of them, and I would like to highlight three of them mainly because that's the main differentiator between the three. Of course, there can be overlap, between the criterias, but let's start with technology. Like, what is the difference between traditional software products, ML products, and Gen AI products? So, traditional software products, in terms of technology, are based on some rule-based software, some rule-based engine, or any process management software. That's the criteria of a technology um, 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 for traditional software products. For ML products, they are based on ML algorithms. ML algorithm means any platform on the previous slide you're talking about, or maybe you are doing the coding or training, model training yourself. So that is based on certain ML algorithms. So that's a technique that we have to use to get the results, right? We can use a platform, we can train our own models in house, as I mentioned, but the algorithms, the technology is underlying requirements based on the problem that we're solving. We can build models accordingly. If I move to Gen AI, these are again a specialized version of ML, you can say subset of ML only, where problems like chatbot example, where we need responses, a detailed responses, the IVR that is speaking to you, we talk to Alexa, we talk to Google Siri Home. So these, sorry, Apple Siri and Google Home. So they basically are nowadays more like a conversational AI, right? So they are running algorithms in the backend, which are deep algorithms, engines like LLMs, models, large language models, and computer vision techniques there. So that's a technology that is used there. So that's the differentiator between these. One of the differentiator between these three product categories. How do you define a success of these three products? Or one, for traditional software, is there is a functional requirement. They are more business and functional specific. If that requirement gets satisfied, then the product is successful, right? So for ML, it can be iterative because it depends upon a probabilistic approach. You are actually getting an accuracy up to a certain level. Let's say the model is 80% accurate. Now 80% accuracy can be acceptable in certain scenarios, but in many scenarios 95% accuracy is required, or which means 80% is not acceptable. So if that is the case, we have to iterate. So it's more like an iterative process where the success will only be considered if the product is crossing that criteria, crossing that accuracy, right? So if, as long as I'm getting 95% cases out of 100 right, I'm going to use it. Otherwise it's not useful for me. Let's rebuild it, right? So similarly, then Gen AI is slightly different. Apart from accuracy, there are some other criteria that are very, very important, and recent examples of, we have been hearing in the news, right? So response quality is very important, like how a chatbot that you're using and how a voice assistant that you're using is responding you, what kind of tonality, modality, language, profanity, all these things are considered. So response has to be not only good, it has to be empathetic, right? So biasness, this is a very recent debate that is ongoing, don't want to call that out, but you can see that if anything that occurs which is not or anything related to bias, some bias, customers don't want any kind of information, or actually it should not happen as well, but do not want any kind of information that is biased, because actually it leads to further actions which can impact everything else, right? So response quality, biasness, hallucinations is something where something is wrong information is given, or unrelated information, I would say, right? I'm asking X but answering is Y. So that kind of examples are also very well monitored, right? How much hallucinations is happening. And this can very well happen because, as I mentioned, that the models that you're using, the LLM models, are trained on very generic use cases. You are talking about airline, telephone, industry specific use cases, so they might give responses which are not, sometimes unrelated, sometimes can throw an error, kind of thing, right? Latency, so it should not take too much time also. Let's say you're talking to voice assistant, you cannot wait for 10, 15 seconds or 20 seconds or 1 minute to answer that back. You need an immediate answer as human response, right? So as I mentioned, you are mimicking the human, so latency is a very important criteria, that how much, within how many milliseconds you are answering, especially voice chats or voice, or the chats both, right? No one wants to wait on the call. Yeah, so that's the success criteria for all these products. So the point is that these are the products. So these are measured across these success criterias, and based on again requirements, discussions, the product success is considered. The third differentiator I would like to call out is developers. So who works on what? Mainly in the traditional software products, there is a product manager, always the case. But apart from product manager, let's say software developers or engineers who work on this product, there can be many collaborative teams as well. In the ML side, what additional resources are required is data scientists and machine learning engineers. Data scientists who might train the models, build the model, develop the models, versus machine learning engineers who actually help deploying those models. ML ops team, we can say, right? Similarly, in Gen AI, also very similar, a set of resources: data scientists, software developers, product engineering team, machine learning engineering team, data engineering team sometimes as well, because you do a lot of measurements as well. So the data has to go live, what it is showing, so all has to be monitored properly. So especially until they become perfect, we don't accept that. So that's why you need many more resources in both the ML and Gen AI product side. So I hope this slide is helpful in understanding the difference between these three product categories. If any questions we can take, otherwise I can move to the next slide.
Yeah, I think we have two very interesting questions, Aniket. One question is from Isha, where
Mhm.
she's saying that do you think in coming years traditional software will completely be replaced by ML product?
No, again, the reason is very simple, that ML should only be used when the problem is, first of all, I think we'll talk about this in case study as well. But just to very briefly answer this point is, ML and Gen AI will be specific use cases, right? There are many more products which do not require any kind of ML or any kind of Gen AI, right? So of course you can add a flavor to it, but traditional software was there, are there, and will be there. So I don't think so they're going to go away. But of course, whenever the data is required, you need a there is a problem statement where you need more detailed responses, you want to generate something out of the product, then of course traditional software and Gen AI product software or ML product can be combined and one product can be there. But of course, all this criterias or all these products, the solutioning will always be there.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, it's not that these systems will not completely. It is very, very customer use
Yeah.
case specific. What is a business problem that you're looking at where you need to figure this out?
Yeah.
There is another question from Satya where he's asking what are the regulatory or legal aspect that PM needs to oversee when using the Gen AI based solutions?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I think the if you see that here, the response, the success criteria. So actually, we should have added compliance as well. But I think response quality is something comes under compliance, right? So as I mentioned, the tonality, the modality, right? So there are so many things that can happen. If you have used Chat GPT, if you pass your name to Chat GPT, in the backend they redact that information. So when I say redaction, it basically meaning hiding the name of individuals, the emails, the phone numbers, the ssn, Aadhaar card, all these numbers they don't accept, right? So they have this redaction layer on top of it. So
Hmm.
ideally, whenever we run any kind of Gen AI or ML product, not only Gen AI, ML as well, we do not use PII, PCI information. So when I say PI information, is personally identified information. We have done this in PayPal also, right? So basically, the idea is that do not use any information which leads to any kind of bias,
Right.
any kind of gender information, education qualification like that. Don't use that information in generating any of the model, right? That is a compliance requirement. Otherwise, you are not compliant. There are regulations available. In India, it is coming, but let's say in US, it is already there, and very strict rules are there. Recently, again, you would have heard the recommendation engine was questioned. I think TikTok's recommendation engine was questioned. The data that they're using is the algorithms they're using personal data. So the CEO was questioned in the, I think, the Senate and the Congress, I guess. So there are cases that can leakages can happen, but of course there is a contract. There are rules in which any product who is getting built have to be compliant.
Right. And I
Yeah.
think we, as part of our future next upcoming slide, we also talk about, everything in terms of inclusivity,
Yeah.
fairness,
Yeah.
privacy that needs to be shared. And also, I just want to kind of add on here. See, this is still an evolving space. So if you
Mm.
look at it, the whole policy evolution is constantly happening as technology is moving, as new models are coming in, as new use cases are being solved. I think these policies across countries, across continents are also evolving, right?
Mm.
Um, I'll probably just one last question before we move on, because there are already a bunch of questions which are asking about what are the skill sets which are needed. So there's a question from Mohit Aniket, which says we spoke about application layer, which is AI tools.
Yeah,
Traditional software, is it apps or SaaS? I don't know if I completely got the question.
I think
Uh, Okay,
it.
he Mohit has written a much detailed question here. We spoke about application layer, which is AI tools like various models where PM would exist in traditional software has app. Then you have a cloud layer, which
Yeah,
exists in traditional app too. And then the hardware where you have the GPUs and the virtual machines. So
yeah.
that means the PMs are continue to going to solve use cases, write documents, write differences. Okay, I think it is. So he's asking that in a traditional software versus a AI/ML based software,
Hmm.
what is going to be some of the very deeper nuances for a PM that
Yeah,
would change, right? So
yeah.
probably you can start take a stab at it, Aniket, and I would like to add my perspective too.
Yeah, sure. So, okay, let me rephrase the question if I understand. So, basically, the question is that there is a role that PM plays in the software, traditional software products. Now, what additional the roles or the processes that PMs have to follow in ML and Gen AI products? Is that the
That
question?
is right. Yeah, because there is we talked about the three layers in the AI stack,
Yeah, yeah,
wherein we talked about the AI tooling layer, and then we
yeah.
talked about the hardware layer and all that. So, should we
Yeah.
hold on this question till we
I
come
think
to
next slide.
the next part of it?
Yeah, no. So the next slide, I think, kind of answers that question. But if the
Yeah,
question is still unanswered after next slide, we can take a stab at it. I
yeah,
think
sure,
that's.
Mohit. We can come back to this. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think this is where the differentiator, in terms of the skills that are, will be different. So if you see here on the left hand side, we have again traditional software PM. So just to call out couple of skills that are there, business acumen is required because that's where the requirements will come from. Product design, user experience. There is a planning and prioritization process. There is a market research, go to market strategy involved. There is a technologist layer, which is like basic coding, technical analysis, or there is some, if there is some engineering stack that is being followed in a particular company, product manager should have the knowledge of that, should be at least knowing the flow, that how this engineering stack will work. There is a quality assurance, and there is a project management skill set that is required for a traditional software product. If I now take the AI/ML PM, which is I'm combining both ML and Gen AI, um, the difference will be in three mainly rows that you can see, three areas. One, the the technical area part, the technology part, right? So where the AI/ML PM has to know couple of things. One, he or she should have a knowledge of algorithms, when to use what. There is a slide again Malti will cover, so it'll be even more like we'll be talking about that in more deeper, the breadth perspective. But if you see that here, broadly, the algorithms are supervised learning, unsupervised learning. Let's say I took an example of recommendation engine. A recommendation engine uses an algorithm called collaborative filtering, or let's say market basket analysis. Now, this should be in the knowledge of PM, so that he or she can say, when the discussions of the requirements are being discussed, that okay, this is what we can use, and we have a deployment development framework available. Similarly, when to use an AI based chatbot, when to use deterministic chatbot, this differentiation has to be very clear in the mind of AI PM. So which that will only be clear once we have this knowledge, the technical skills of specifically to AI/ML. Not only that, you need to have the knowledge of how to analyze the data. There's a lot of experimentation goes on, right? So whenever you launch a product, or before launch also, it's always good to validate your product. So when I say product, means your technically ML model or deep learning model. So there can be A/B testing environment where you're actually assessing it on two different user groups, or you want to pre-launch it with a survey with the data, maybe demo environment, you can do that. But in both cases, you need to know how to analyze this data, what are your success matrices, and on those on the basis of those matrices, how do you define the success. That differentiation should always be there in the mind of AIPM. Last but not the least is the basic coding is required, right, for AIML PMS, because a lot of time Excel, Python, SQL, you will be, a lot of these stuff you will be doing on a daily basis. That's a day-to-day activity as well, because you might have to suggest many things which data scientists might not be aware at some point, or ML engineer is not able to understand at some level. So you need to explain that well, and you can only explain once you understand the data nuances, the problem nuances very well. right? And then model evaluation, like you need to take a call. Let's say somebody comes to you and say our model is not working. So what do we mean by that? Model is not working means what? Model itself is bad, there's a data quality issue, there is a model algorithm issue, the metric is an issue, we need to change that. So these criteria should be known by AI PM. Data scientists can very well help. If there is a senior data scientist who is working, they can very well help decode this problem. But a lot of time PMs have to take this call on their own like knowledge, and then suggest the engineers that okay, this is what we need to do. So that differentiation, that should always, in terms of algorithm technical area, should always be there between these two products skills, I would say. Malti, you want to add? You can add, please.
Yeah, I have a couple of points. So one is that I think as we were saying earlier, that the focus, the value that a product manager brings onto the table has to start from the what is the business objective that you're looking, what is the problem, what is the customer problem that you're looking to solve, right? So that goes without saying. That's like the primary focus area. Now, in one of the subsequent slides, we are going to talk about, do I succeed as an AI/ML PM only if I know everything? Now, I think one of the core area which Aniket spoke about is that you really need to be very, very data analytic oriented. You need to be very, very clear what is your key KPI. You need to be constantly be looking at what are the metrics, how is your model learning, how is your results outcomes are. What you need to have those very clear feedback loops based on which you are constantly updating. Now, one of the things I really want to kind of touch upon here beyond what Aniket said is that the complexity of the use case that you are dealing with, right? Whether it is deterministic, whether it is a completely undeterministic area, the complexity of that also kind of rides along with your own skill set, the talent pool which is available around you in terms of availability of data engineers, data scientists, which will determine that what should be the level of expertise that you should develop in the AI/ML space, right? Not every problem would need AI/ML deep skill set for a PM. In fact, a PM should basically be bringing primarily with the business acumen, and in a traditional software, how you will partner with your technology lead or your solution architect. That is the role that your data scientist plays here, right? So it's a very, very joint, I would say, effort, right? As a PM, you are not replacing your data scientist. Rather, but we all know in the product management world, we need to be able to speak a language that our stakeholders, that our partner in crime are able to understand, right? So, how much of a AI/ML should I learn? How much of a Python should I learn? Should I start coding in Python from tomorrow? Maybe, maybe not. That depends upon which learning path and which career path that you want to take, right? So we will talk about the complexity will determine what is the kind of skill that you need to acquire. But some of the core PM skills, which is around planning, prioritization, market research, user research, closer to the customer, understanding the business, be very, very meticulous around your metrics and KPIs, and a deep technology flair, right, is a very, very important aspect for a product manager in the coming era where AI is becoming very, very core to our software products in one form or the other. It is very important to understand, right? So I'll leave it here and we'll talk a few more things in the subsequent slides. Probably
No.
there is one question, Aniket, which we can take,
Yeah.
which is around how Rashmi is asking that how do you start defining the biases, right? And it's like a blind spot, especially when you're building your model. So when you have to determine, try to mitigate these biases and all that, where will you start?
Yeah. So I would probably we can answer this question through this case study. I think there's one section where we are monitoring the the output, and then we are testing environment. I think that's where we need to be little more careful towards biasness, the results that model is response that model is giving us. So we can talk about this AI powered chatbot, and in that section we can answer Rashmi's question, Malti, if that works.
Yeah, yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah.
Probably we
Okay.
can do this a little fast, this one, because we have, I think, touched upon a few things in the
Yeah,
previous
exactly.
slide.
I'll just quickly, yeah, maybe I'll touch upon those areas where
Three
I think
key
the
questions. I think the skill set, how does the
yes.
day of a PM looks like?
Yeah.
I think let's focus on those parts. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I think this is what we talked about just previously, right? The previous slide. So the main role, if I talk about the day-to-day activity, so again, the idea is not to go in detail of the data and all in the case study, but let's say the problem is that we are defining AI powered chatbot product. So there is a requirement, a product manager is involved. There are a couple of decisions. One, as Malti talked about, this is complexity. So we need to take a call whether this, how complex the problem is, how much uplift we can expect from this. Let's say if we go with this, AI bot, and let's say what are the success matrices that we have to define, like all these responses, the hallucinations, the biasness results, and all these things, right? Once the problem identification is defined, we can talk about the first role, or the second role will be the market research, right? So as a product manager, this was always there, as software product manager as well, and then AI software as well, that this is always there, meaning that product manager has to evaluate in the market how the market currently looks like. What product are you offering? Is there an opportunity to differentiate in terms of your competitors? How can you best position your product? So that's actually a go to market strategy. Then you have requirement gathering phase, where you are very well, now once you have understood the problem statement, done the market research, you know your product, what is going to do or what is going to solve, how to go in the market, then start discussing about the requirements. This is where the drafting PRD stage comes into picture, where create a PRD, draft it, send it to the data scientists, machine learning engineers, ask them to work on the technical design document, so on and so forth. But show it to the customer as well, like these are the requirements that I've understood, any further updates required on that, you do it, and then roll out the final PRD version. Then comes the heavy lifting part of model building, development, deployment part, that you leave it up to data scientist and ML engineer, right? So that's where the collaboration part comes into picture. You train, like data scientists gather the required data, understand the problem with the product statement, go through the PRD, required data gathering, labeling the data, development of the model, which algorithm to build. There is an indication from product manager, but ultimately the call is by data scientists, because they can build the best optimized model required. Then after that, here I think a couple of things. So once we build the model, there are certain instructions from the PRD which data scientists are following, especially on the success criteria. What is the biasness criteria? How do we define the bias? Can we do a test? Can we do a demo with the customer? So idea is, once we do this, let's say we're building a chatbot here, so then idea is how we can integrate the chatbot in the demo environment, show it to the customer. Is customer okay with the results? All the, what happens is, many a times customer themselves, you give them demo environment, they test the results in a counter way, right? They ask deliberately the wrong question and assess that what kind of information the chatbot is giving you. That is where the biasness part is completely, you're asking deliberately the questions, poking the chatbot to answering those questions, and you judge that, okay, how that those questions are answered. That is your evaluation criteria for that. If you think that no, the language is not good, there is a feedback loop. You have to pass the feedback back, ingest those feedback, update your prompts, update your question, update your answer, and then iterate the whole thing. That's where the iteration part comes into picture. Once you do that, there is a development period, there is a launch period that you talk about, there is an announcement that you make within the company, outside the company, that okay, we have a bot ready, it's up and running, this is what it is actually, we expect bot to um, result or response. And then last but not the least, from the customer side, we have to generate the value, the value that we promised here has to be measured and actually delivered to the customer. So you build internal systems, there is a reporting mechanism, measurement mechanism, where actually whatever your defined success metric was, actually can be measured and shared to customer. So for example, number of queries answered, how much bot is able to take the workload from current agents. Otherwise these questions would have been answered by an agent. How much queries are answered, how many queries are answered correctly, that is also a criteria. There are so many, I've only listed for example two here, but there are so many. You define the policies where actually a chatbot is responding. On basis of that, you define whether your product was a successful product or not. So here, step number 1, 2, and 3, product manager plays a significant role. 4, 5, and 6, product manager plays a little bit on the back, take the back seat. Data science and engineering comes into picture. Then step number 7 here is where the data product manager and data science both come together and make sure that the reporting and measurement is correct, and then the product is delivered to customers. So that's, I hope that the Rashmi's question is answered here, but happy to answer any follow-up question if she has. If not, then I can hand over to you, Malti, on the next section.
Yeah, I think Gaurav had a question which is not very clear, and I'm assuming he asked this in the beginning when you started the slide, where he's asking development and deployment frameworks. Why is this not part of the solutioning? Which I'm assuming, since you spoke about that at a later point of time, so that is kind of coming together.
Yeah,
So, yeah, Gaurav, you can let us know if this question is still
I hope this
open. And
answered. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, this part of it. So keep your questions coming. I think I'll move on to the last couple of slides that we have. Yeah. Okay. So Gaurav said, just confirmed saying that yes, it is kind of. So I think, kind of, I would say, just in the previous slides that we have covered, right? The evolution is kind of very uneven, and there are a lot of companies which are today, let's say, tech first companies, and they are all looking at that. Okay, how do I evolve my strategy to become a AI first company? Now, let me say that just the way not every product can be driven by a product led growth, not every company or in every use case would require to go AI first. Just some of the example that Aniket spoke about earlier, there are lot of scenarios where your rule based mechanisms works beautifully, and unless you see a huge impact, a huge benefit for your, either for your company in terms of revenue cost savings, or for your customers in terms of any huge customer benefit, you need not go full blown into becoming an AI first company, right? You can actually rather take more baby steps, saying that, hey, if I have to leverage on this technology, where do I start, right? And I think the good part there is that there are tons of organizations there already. You have whole lot of open source model, you have a whole lot of models and companies like OpenAI, which are offering you APIs where you can at least start to play with it. So what we did is that just on the X and Y axis of low to high in terms of knowledge that a PM needs to have versus the complexity of the use cases, we have kind of just tried to put in a graph. Now, if your use cases, for example, I was recently in a conference and there they spoke about one of the companies presented where they wanted their content creators to be able to quickly create their events on their platform, right? So they just ask for three or four things: give me the date, give me the description, give me this information. And they were calling some APIs maybe from a mid journey. They were calling some APIs from an OpenAI, which was basically creating some beautiful descriptions for the event. And what they saw was that in less than 1 minute, they were able to create some beautiful, images, beautiful description, and the content creator was able to complete. So the clear benefit for them over there was that more than 13 or 14% of their content creators actually completed creating the event in less than 1 minute. So obviously your NPS scores is also going up, right? So all I'm trying to say is that please be very, very cognitive of what is the use case, what you're solving for. Is this something that requires to really build a large language model in house? Because that also requires a lot of investment, whether it is in terms of the hardware, whether in terms of infrastructure, people. So and there is only a finite resources of investment or resources that any company has, right? So be very mindful of that. So that's exactly what you see. The first one is that if you have to say, I want people to have a very nice feel, the example of that I just took for content creators, that is probably in your first step. The second step is that I want to have, for example, I'm a e-commerce this things, and I want to have a very clear learning path. If my customer is saying that I have to do a refund, then the bot should ask this question, then the bot should ask this question, based on which customer will give this information. Then you really don't need to build a complete chatbot. There are a bunch of offerings there, and you can just upload your FAQs, upload your content that you need to be do, and that will solve the problem. The next one is that where you probably really need to have more context of your users, you need to have more hyper personalization. So that means there is a lot more data that is needed in order to build that. While I was talking about resources, I missed mentioning data. We all know that no model is going to be effective unless there is a huge amount of data which is available to train it, right? It is simply your input processes it and then you get the output, right? So be very mindful of that. So those are the places where you use the current models to say that how do I get an enterprise version of it. I can feed more data which is very contextual to my audience, and then use that. So examples here would be personalization, hyper recommendation engines, and stuff like that. And the last one is, of course, very, very undeterministic, like cancer detection, a lot of blue sky strategy, for example, where you are putting it up. Those would be the cases on the last step. Coming to the next slide, Aniket, if you can move. So there are a few questions. I'm just looking at them. How can I prepare for getting AI PM role in a company working in application layer? I'm just going to. So I'll just take next 2 minutes to walk through the slides, and after that we are done. There is one resources slide, and as I said, we are going to be sharing the deck with everybody who had signed up using our Google form. Um, we will be sharing that, and it also has a list of resources which you can refer to. So largely, if you look at it, because there are also a bunch of folks who are not from a PM background, but rather from data science background, right? So what you see on the blue squares are basically all your different stages of product development life cycle, right? Now, definitely all the work which is done in each of these stages is focused towards a vision that you're looking to acquire. It calls for communication. Communication is like the one of the key pillars for a product manager, right? It is oral communication, written communication, any kind of communication is critical. And automation. So wherever it is possible for you to automate your steps, whether it is writing your PRD, whether it is building your distilling insights from the feedback, wherever you can do the automation, put you leverage on these AI tools to do that. Now let's come to this aspect. Now, as a product manager, what changes with AI, right? I mean, you are still driven to achieve your business KPIs. You are looking to see that how do I leverage so much of data? How do I leverage so much of content, information that I have from my users in order to provide value to them as part of my product? Now, in context of that, the most important thing is that you need to understand the problem, right? And the boxes that you see here, which are marked, that these are much more AI relevant, right? The more data that you are going to source from different sources, from your voice of customers, from your, let's say, app rating reviews and all that, you need to basically make sure that you are looking at distilling that information, and very, very important that you are constantly looking at that the data is clean, that the data is accurate wherever possible, right? For example, wherever you are collecting this information from. Now, once you have kind of identified the key problem statements, the next thing is towards building solution. Now, when I, as a product manager for AI product manager, I am designing, I think one of the things Aniket spoke about is that it has to be the first level of your product is probably not going to be perfect. You are constantly learning based on the data that you're capturing from your users. You are trying to become smarter, you're trying to become better. Just the example of recommendation engine, right? So make sure that your solution that you're designing is simple and very relevant to your audience. There is a lot of transparency. When I talk about transparency, please make it as clear to your audience to say that what data you are collecting, where are you storing, how are you taking care of the privacy information. So wherever you can get transparency, when you are looking at, we talked about some of the use cases. So as a new age solution, can I look at having a conversational interface with my audience? Can I look at through images? Can I do it through voice, right? So those are the areas where AI gives you a competitive edge as compared to any of your competitors, right? How can you be more inclusive? And I think about speed, Aniket already spoke about it, right? Your solution has to be really fast, right? The data is very accessible. So make sure that you're constantly looking at all these stuff. As you go about designing your solution, I think one of the key part I would like to spend like a minute over here. You One of the key things, especially a lot of product led growth, right? The beauty of AI is that you can leverage, you can do as much experiment as possible to understand how are your users using your product, right? You can use these tools, derive insights out of that, do a lot of multivariant experiments, do A/B testing in order to see what does it work. Now, as you take these feedback loops, you kind of improvise in terms of your governance, your data collection, your data accuracy, your data management, your data privacy, all those aspects. You continue to learn how your customers are getting benefit with your product, right? And so that goes to in terms of constantly measure and monitor, and that eventually leads to building a solution which is very, very relevant to your audience, adding a lot of value. And in context of that, you might be integrating with a lot of different data sources, you might be talking to a lot of different systems. We spoke about the tooling layer, we spoke about the applications. So, and I think one of the key aspect is that please be very cognitive of build versus buy, because while building is really cool, but if you can just plug and play a large language model, just call those APIs, that is definitely going to help you with a much, much faster time to market, right? And a lot of things which are not covered in the squares are basically the traditional product manager is expected to do, right? So those are some of the nuances of how the the context for a AI product manager changes. Now you are not only looking at these aspects, you are looking at much more deeper aspects in terms of your data governance, how your data is coming in, what does it mean from a speed perspective, integrations, feedback loop, evaluation, cost, a whole lot of things, right? So I think with this, I will just pause here. I think this is the last slide, Aniket, right? We have more resources is one of the slides, which is just basically links, which we will share. I think we can spend a few more minutes looking at the questions.
Yeah, I can start sharing.
Okay, so yeah, Aniket, go ahead. You can take some of these questions.
There was a question you were saying that somebody was asking about
How
the.
can I prepare for getting an AI PM role in a company working in the applications layer? So I
Yeah.
probably just want to add one thing, right? I mean, see, if you are I think the journey of AI probably start with making yourself data aware, right? So I don't know what exactly is your background, but I think some of the core tenets that Aniket spoke about, I think you need to start being more data uh, data led. You need to be more data informed. Try to find out what are some of those key use cases. And at any point of time, does it make sense for some part, some features of your existing product to be repurposed, leveraging some of the available commoditized AI products would be one aspect. And I would say in order to join as an AI PM, don't look to take up another job. I think the best use case is to start from your product, start from your company. I think that would be something I would say. Aniket, please feel free to add to it.
No, I think mostly you're covered. But just one thing I would like to answer here is, or maybe add on what you said, right? So think of your current role. Let's say if you're a PM or you're a data scientist. So if you're a PM, then PM skills you need to master. So we saw the comparison. That is the reason of putting that comparison, that people who are coming from already PM background, what they need to add on to the skills, right? Now the only thing is skills. I think we listed. What you need to add is a flow, right? How do you want to start acquiring those skills? It'll take time. It's a professional skills, you need to work on them, and then only it'll you'll be able to solve the problems with that. But if I put together a flow, let's say that you are a AIPM, you have the product management knowledge, then you need what else? The data analytics, machine learning skills. So then immediate next path is understand how problems can be solved in a data. Simple example could be taken as, let's say, an experimentation example, how to conduct an A/B test, right? Let's say your product launch is there, a company is launching a new website as a product. How do you compare these two? Let's say the version, old version and new version, what are the success metrics there? Start from data analytics, slowly move to ML, basic ML, then move to Gen AI. That should be the flow. You can refer to materials available, all these things, but that should be the flow, that start with the data analytics to ML to deep learning. And then you come back again to the product management. So because it's actually a sandwich role, so product management between the AIML skills. So like that, if I consider for a PM, for a data scientist the other way around. So data scientist, I'm hoping that person has the knowledge of ML, where, when to use what. Person can acquire the Gen AI knowledge if it's not there. Otherwise, if you have, very good. Then you now get into the product management area. How to understand the customer problem. What do you think, the any problem that comes to you? How do you solve it with the level of complexity, as Malti mentioned, right? So whether it's how much complexity is there? Do we need actually a solution which is AIML driven, or non AIML solution driven can also help? Ultimately, customer doesn't want what technology you're using. Customer only want what is the solution. So if you can bring that solution without using any technology, it will actually work for them. So that's why we have to decode that problem. So understanding in that area, start involving more in business discussions for a data scientist, will help you to move on the path of becoming a AIML PM. I think that's, there are a lot of details to it, but that's a flow if you want to follow this, in perspective.
Yeah.
I hope that answers. Yeah.
Okay, there is one question from Satya. Are you aware of any sandbox playground systems where PMs can do some experimentation on product ideas before diving into creating focused model development cycle?
I believe there are products, the company specifics, definitely tools are there, sandbox environment. So demoing purpose sandbox environments are there. But I believe a lot of like Google, Amazon products that you use there, ML as a platform, ML as a tooling or the service, right? You get those platforms for sandboxing. I don't, yeah, I think it's available there only. So you see the option, test it, or deployment testing. You have the option there in Amazon SageMaker. I think they have it. You can just run it and see how the model is performing, how the results are. Like there are suggestions also given to you, like how you can improve the model, so on and so forth. I think, yeah, it should help
Yeah.
there.
And in fact, one of the questions I have as part of our feedback form is that if you would be interested to join a course, in the future, so feel free to add to that as well. Probably one last question that we can tame. I know we are over the time,
Yeah.
Aniket, would be that just like product frameworks, does an AI PM uses any frameworks to decide if we need AI to solve the problem, or does this knowledge comes with experience?
This comes with experience always, but of course there are some SOPs available, right? So like, I mean, you have what algorithm to apply when, you have definitely have that knowledge that the SOPs available. Like there is a data to label, so then supervised learning is applicable. There's no data to label, then the unsupervised learning is applicable. Now the depth of the problem can only be learned with the data quality and everything, right? So it's a mixed approach. So right, so there are few SOPs, and there are few things that you learn. You make a mistake, you learn, and then you improvise. So
Yeah,
that's
I think whether you are an AI PM or a regular PM, I think you just need to just do it.
yeah.
That's the only way. I think we can take one last question. The path shared for a PM to move to AI PM role gets a bit challenging at times due to plethora of knowledge present on the web.
Yeah.
Where should a PM limit themselves when learning analytics, basic ML, Gen AI? I think I would always say that probably I can just add a little context, right? Please, there can always be a lot of cognitive overload with so much of content happening around us. So my suggestion would be that probably start in the premise of the products that you are building,
Yeah.
right? Because you are the closest to those use cases. Try to see that in similar space, whether or probably even in a substitute space, what are others doing, what are the kind of problems that are being solved. So instead of, I would say, taking a hammer and looking for a nail, I would say first of all figure out what needs to be hanged. Is it a is it a small picture, or is it a cycle that needs to be hanged? So get the context, get the business use case, and then work backwards from it to say that in order to solve that, what could be doing. And I think stay very active in terms of very curious. And thankfully, in this era, we all are there in Hajar social platforms, communities. So I think, and this webinar is one such attempt to kind of bring in the awareness. My 2 cents would be to start there.
Yeah.
Aniket, you want to add something more?
No, I think it's pretty much answered. But Gaurav, if you want to really structure this, and I said like flow has to be created. I would say pick up one industry, one problem, look for a couple of materials over there around that, right? So you don't have to go here and there. Solve one by one. I think that'll help. Of course, there is a lot of information, so you have to limit your resources. But I would say pick up one, industry, one problem. Let's say you are in, let's say, retail industry, for example. Then for the, let's say, for target for next 1 month, I'll only focus on retail problems. Like what are the areas where Gen AI, ML can solve retail problems. So I think that'll help. So once you do that, then move to next industry, then move to next, like that. So, or
Yeah,
if you are very industry specific person, then you don't have to go outside. So there will be, of course, areas where like manufacturing is using a lot of robots. So we are not going there, right? So I mean, there are a lot of areas which will keep happening in parallel. So that's okay. But I would say, as Malti mentioned, you have to like think from, start from your industry, where how you can contribute within your domain, and then scale it up.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I think I'm hoping that we kind of answered most of the questions. As I shared, I would be also uploading this video and the deck that we have created. Some parts of it, we'll just curate it and share it across with this audience. So first of all, thank you so much, Aniket, for taking this time out. And thanks to all of you. Hopefully, you found this session useful. I have shared the feedback link. Probably I can share it again to give your feedback, and please do let us know how this was there. And if you would like to call us out on social media, you can find me and Aniket on LinkedIn. I think most of you joined through the session, so thank you again. And we are planning to do few more webinars and few more sessions, so stay tuned in for that. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.